You ever find yourself stuck on one moment, like it's frozen in time, and no matter how much you try to move forward, your mind keeps pulling you back? That's what happened with me and Emily Grace Harper. She was 18, from this small town called Marshall, Texas, and one summer night she left home to catch a train to Austin. The plan was simple enough: start summer classes at Lone Star Women's College, something she was pretty excited about. But here's the thing, that night, something slipped away with her. I remember hearing about a taxi driver named Roy Thompson. He was the last person to see her before she vanished. Roy said he dropped Emily off at around 8 p.m. by a dorm building, Whitman Hall. That's the last real solid trace anyone had of her. After that, it's like she just slipped through the cracks. No texts, no calls, nothing. And that's what keeps gnawing at me. I keep picturing her getting out of that cab, stepping onto that campus, maybe a little nervous but hopeful. Did she look back? Did she feel like something was off? Because if she did, she never said a word. Sometimes I wonder if there was something in those last few minutes that changed everything. Something no one noticed, something that should have set off alarms. But the truth is, nobody knows. Not really. And that's the worst part, knowing that moment exists, but never being able to reach it. I keep turning it over in my head, like maybe if I just remember it right, something will come clear. But it never does. So after Emily paid Roy for the taxi ride and handed him her trunk ticket, like she trusted him to pick it up later, she didn't just wander off alone. Nope. She walked right over to these two guys hanging out by this rust-colored Chevy convertible. I can't get that image out of my head. Roy said one of the guys was tall, the other kind of stocky. Emily didn't just approach them like strangers, though. No, she acted like she knew them, like they were familiar faces or something. That's what's been twisting in my mind ever since. Who were those two men? Were they really just friends or some casual acquaintances? Or was there something else under the surface? It's hard not to wonder if that moment, that brief meeting by the car, was where everything started to go sideways. Like maybe Emily thought she was safe, or maybe she felt like she had no choice but to trust them. But what kind of people were those guys? Were they really her friends, or did they have darker intentions? Roy didn't stick around to find out. He just drove away, assuming it was nothing unusual. And maybe it was nothing, or maybe it was everything. I keep replaying it in my head, over and over, because sometimes it's those tiny moments, those small decisions that lead to the biggest disappearances. And with Emily, I can't shake the feeling that those two guys and that rusty old Chevy hold answers that we'll probably never get. After that night, it's like Emily just vanished off the face of the earth. No sign of her checking into Whitman Hall or any other dorm on campus. No messages, no calls, no hints at all. It's like she stepped into a shadow and disappeared. I keep trying to put myself in her shoes. What was running through her mind? Was she scared? Was she planning to run away from something? But the thing is, it just doesn't add up. Emily was close with her family. Really close. I mean, they were tight-knit, and she always talked about how important they were to her. Someone like that wouldn't just leave without a word, not without some kind of explanation, or at least a goodbye. That's what makes it so hard to swallow. The silence after that night isn't just mysterious, it's painful. I wonder if she thought she could start fresh somewhere new, maybe escape whatever was bothering her, or maybe something happened to her that night, something she couldn't control. Every theory feels like a stab in the dark. I keep questioning what I missed. What signs were there that I didn't see? There's this emptiness in trying to piece it together, because the longer I stare at that silence, the less sense it makes. And the worst part, that void, that unknown, never really lets you move on. I keep replaying it, hoping for answers, but it feels like the night swallowed her whole and left nothing behind. When the police finally checked out Emily's dorm room, it looked almost untouched, like she hadn't really planned to leave at all. But then there were these strange little things, details that didn't sit right with me. They found a ripped sleeve of fabric that wasn't hers, something foreign tossed among her things, and there was this cigarette butt, from a brand she never smoked. That stuck with me more than anything. Why would something like that be there? It's like someone else had been there. Someone Emily didn't want anyone to know about. Or maybe she met someone in that room who scared her, or who she just couldn't bring herself to tell anyone about. It's the kind of thing that messes with your head, you know, because you start imagining all kinds of possibilities. What kind of person left those traces? Were they just careless? Or was it something darker? The room felt like a silent witness to something that went wrong, something that Emily kept hidden from the world. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about her disappearance. Was she running from someone, or had she invited someone in and things got out of hand? The not knowing is like a weight pressing down on your chest. That ripped fabric and that cigarette butt, they're little clues that don't add up but refuse to be ignored. I keep circling back to them, trying to connect the dots, but all they do is make the whole thing feel even more tangled, because they suggest there was more to that night than anyone's been able to figure out. I keep coming back to the two men everyone seemed to fixate on, her boyfriend Jason Monroe and the taxi driver Roy Thompson. Jason was the obvious suspect at first, but he passed every polygraph test thrown his way. He swore Emily had no reason to run away, no secret lover waiting for her, no hidden drama to push her out the door. He was also the one who first called her mom, reporting her missing. That part always made me think, if he was involved, why be so quick to raise the alarm? Then there's Roy, the taxi driver. His past wasn't clean, a few petty crimes, a rough reputation. His wife said later, years after Emily disappeared, that Roy hadn't even come home until well past midnight that night. That didn't add up with his initial statements. But even with that suspicious timeline, he passed the polygraphs too, and he died years later, never charged, never named officially in the case. It makes me wonder, did something slip through the cracks? Was there someone else entirely who managed to stay hidden while these two were dragged under the spotlight? Or was the truth buried beneath all the lies, half-truths, and silence? It's hard not to feel like the case was always a little bit out of reach, like there was a missing piece no one could find. I keep turning it over, asking myself if the answers were in plain sight all along, or if the real story is locked away somewhere, buried under all the doubt and suspicion, and maybe it always will be. It's impossible not to think about the string of attacks around Marshall back then, the ones everyone called the Whispering Pine Strangler cases. 5 young women, all around Emily's age, found in those quiet, lonely spots where no one would think to look. The whole town was on edge. What really haunts me is that Emily actually knew a few of those girls. They weren't just strangers passing by, they were part of her world. So naturally, people wondered if her disappearance was connected, if the same person who took those other girls had something to do with Emily. But the police never found any solid evidence to tie her case to the others. It just leaves this empty space filled with what-ifs. What if she was in the wrong place at the wrong time? What if someone was watching her? Or worse, what if she saw something she wasn't supposed to and that's why she disappeared? I keep going back to the idea that maybe the cases were linked somehow, even if no one could prove it. It's like staring at a puzzle missing a piece, the edges almost fitting but never quite clicking together. The silence around it all is deafening. You want to believe the worst fits the pieces because it at least gives a shape to the fear. But then if it was the same person, why did Emily's story end so differently? Or did it? The questions don't stop, and the answers never come. It just stays there, hanging in the air, a reminder that some mysteries don't want to be solved. Years passed, and every so often something would flicker. A lead, a tip, a hopeful clue. One of the most haunting was when someone told the police that 2 men, both long dead by then, had raped and killed Emily. They said these men had buried her near a dam just outside campus. You'd think that would bring some relief, some end to the endless guessing, but when the cops went looking, they found nothing. Not a single trace. That tip just added to the weight of it all, like a shadow stretching longer across a story that never ends. It's hard to shake the feeling that Emily's case haunts everyone who knew her, everyone who's ever tried to understand. The family, especially, they've been stuck waiting, hoping for some kind of closure, but it feels like the truth is just out of reach, like it's locked behind a door no one can open. I try to imagine what it's like for them, living with the silence, with the unknown, every unanswered question piling up, no real end in sight. It's that endless waiting that gets under your skin. The case doesn't just stay in the past, it clings to the present, like a wound that won't heal. And me, I'm left turning it over again and again, wondering if we ever will know what really happened to Emily. If we're all just chasing shadows, hoping to find some light in a story that's so full of darkness. I keep replaying that day in my head like it's stuck on a loop. I can't shut off. September, bright skies. No wind, just one of those crisp days that make you feel like nothing could possibly go wrong. Nothing felt off. Nothing hinted that we were about to lose her. Lena had asked Dad to drop her near Hemlock Street. Just a quick stop, she said. Needed some pantyhose and toothpaste before the school dance that night. She wasn't dressed for anything special. Just jeans and that oversized sweater she always wore when she didn't want to draw attention. I didn't think twice about it. Nobody did. It was the kind of errand you forget about 10 minutes after it's done. She told me she'd swing by that little music shop off Ashgrove to see her friend, then just walk home. A mile maybe. She'd done that walk 100 times. Safe neighborhood. Broad daylight. It wasn't even close to dark yet. And she had her bag. That old brown clutch she bought during a family trip to New Mexico. Carried it everywhere. Inside was a key, 2 tubes of toothpaste. I remember teasing her about that. And a few bucks. That was it. That was all she had on her. That image sticks with me the most. Lena walking off like it was just another errand, holding that worn bag in her hand like it meant nothing. No phone, no backpack. Just her and a tiny purse. If I'd known that was the last time anyone would see her, really see her, I don't know. Maybe I would have followed. Maybe I would have noticed something, anything. But I didn't. No one did. And she vanished like she was never there to begin with. It didn't take long before someone brought up the blue Mercury. Not even 2 days after Lena vanished. This guy from a few blocks over claimed he'd seen her in the backseat of a car that didn't look familiar. A worn-out Mercury sedan. Kind of beat up. Definitely didn't belong to anyone around here. Turns out it was stolen. Never registered. Plates didn't match. The whole thing a mess. Travis Bell was driving. Older guy, maybe mid-20s at the time. Always had this uneasy energy to him, like he was trying too hard to act normal. People said he used to hang around the high school even though he wasn't in it anymore. Creepy, but not enough to raise alarms back then. Dean Halley was with him. Now he was different. The kind of guy who always seemed to be watching people from the side of his eyes. Didn't talk much. Gave off this weird, quiet dominance. Like he didn't need to say anything to get under your skin. A mechanic out in Northridge said he saw them. Lena too. He remembered her because she looked out of place. Too young, too nervous. Said she looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. But what really stuck with him, and what sticks with me now, was how Dean kept his hand on her neck. Not in a violent way. Not exactly. Just possessive. Like she couldn't go anywhere unless he moved her there himself. Like she wasn't in control of her own body anymore. I try not to think about that part too much, but it's impossible. Once someone plants that kind of image in your head, it doesn't leave. It festers. And the worst part, nobody stopped them. No one thought to ask questions. She was right there. It wasn't until way later, weeks maybe, that anyone started talking about the farm. Out in Granger County, tucked past a broken sign and a stretch of dirt road most people wouldn't bother with. One of those seasonal places that paid teenagers cash under the table to haul potatoes during the harvest. Lena had apparently been there just blending in, working the fields like the rest of them, head down, hair tied back, wearing clothes that didn't fit quite right, like they'd been borrowed or picked out in a rush. There was a girl named Shannon who remembered her, said they bunked in the same housing shed. She didn't know Lena's full name at first, just called her the quiet one from downstate. According to Shannon, Lena barely talked unless someone spoke to her first, and even then it was like pulling teeth. Always glancing around like she expected someone to drag her off at any second. Kept asking if anyone had heard news from Portland, whether there were cops looking for a missing girl. She cried sometimes. Shannon said it wasn't dramatic or loud, just this tired, hollow kind of crying, like someone who didn't even expect help anymore, just wanted it to be over. But the others, farm kids, runaways, locals looking for cash, they had their own baggage. Nobody asked questions. Nobody got involved. That place wasn't built for sympathy. And I keep thinking about that. how she was right there, surrounded by people, working under the same sky as everyone else. Dust in her lungs, blisters on her hands, trying to hold it together while the world just moved on around her. If someone had paid attention, if one person had just stopped and really looked at her, I wonder if she'd still be here. I think about that night more than I should. The one Shannon talked about, the bonfire behind the worker trailers. She said it was one of the rare times people let themselves laugh. Music playing off someone's old truck stereo. Cheap beer passed around like currency, even a little dancing in the dirt. For a place like that, it might as well have been a party. Lena had been quiet all day, but Shannon remembered her sitting near the edge of the firelight, knees hugged to her chest, like she didn't want to be seen but didn't want to be alone either. That's when Travis came over, said something low, motioned toward his car. She hesitated, but she got up. She followed him. That's the part that stays with me, the trust or maybe just exhaustion that made her go. Shannon said she watched them drive off down the service road, headlights cutting through the dark like knives. Nobody really noticed they were gone. Not until Travis came back alone, calm, unbothered, tossed a half-empty soda bottle in the fire, laughed at some joke someone told, just blended right back in like nothing had happened. He told them Lena was staying with someone near the hill, a woman who took in girls sometimes. Nobody asked too many questions, at least not out loud, but Shannon said something felt off, how he didn't look anybody in the eye, how he grabbed a beer and disappeared into his trailer faster than usual. It wasn't until later that someone figured out what really happened. He'd driven her across the state line, back towards Stone Bend Reserve, and left her there, with Dean, just left her, like she was nothing, like it didn't matter if she ever came back. After the potato harvest was done, Travis just vanished, like he slipped through some crack. Nobody was watching. Rumors said he headed south. Florida, maybe. The cops tried tracking him down a few times, but it was like talking to a ghost. He never said much, always playing dumb, pretending he didn't know anything about Lena's disappearance. I keep wondering if he really didn't, or if he just didn't want to. Then there was Dean. He wasn't new to trouble. Rap sheet long enough to make anyone nervous. When police finally got around to questioning him, they dangled immunity in front of him, hoping to crack something open. But he clammed up, refused to say a word beyond the bare minimum. It felt like he was daring them to do their worst, because he wasn't going to help. What made it worse was his family back in Gravel Ridge. They didn't just ignore the police, they shut the door on everything, pretended like they never even heard Lena's name, like she was a stranger who never crossed their path. It wasn't just denial though. It was this cold, calculated silence that told me they knew more than they let on. That maybe they weren't just protecting Dean, but something darker, something no one wanted out in the open. It's like hitting a wall you can't climb or break through. Like the answers are on the other side, but nobody's handing over the key. That kind of silence, it's worse than lies. It's like a slow poison that seeps in, making you wonder if the truth ever mattered to anyone but me, and if it ever will. There was this hunter who said he stumbled across bones deep in the woods near Millfield. Not just any bones. He claimed they were wrapped in women's clothes. He was certain, like he had this gut feeling it was Lena. But the thing is, when he tried to go back and show someone, the woods had already swallowed everything whole. No bones, no clues, nothing left to follow. Like the earth itself had erased the whole thing. It's the kind of story that gets under your skin because it feels so close to the truth, yet it's just out of reach. That hunter's discovery became one more shadow in a long line of shadows. A glimmer of hope, then nothing. It's like the forest itself was guarding its secrets, and whoever or whatever was there didn't want anyone poking around. Lena's name stayed on that missing list, quietly hanging in the background like a question mark that no one could answer. Her dad, he passed away years ago, probably without ever knowing what really happened to her. And her mom? She still clings to the hope that Lena might come back, or at least that there's an answer somewhere out there. But sometimes I wonder if she's holding on to hope because she has to, not because she believes. Like it's the only thing left to do when the truth won't come. I keep replaying that whole thing in my head, trying to fit the pieces together. But the woods don't give up their secrets easily, and maybe some things are just meant to stay lost. There's this one thing that still sticks with me, the memory of that clerk at Benson's general store. He wasn't a big part of the story at first, just some guy behind the counter, but what he told people later, it sends chills down my spine. He said Lena came in with Dean, looking completely wiped out. Not just tired, but like she was carrying something heavy inside her. Something nobody else could see. She asked, almost like she was scared to even say it, if she could use the phone. I keep thinking about that moment, the way she must have held back, how she probably hoped someone would notice and help without her having to say too much. The clerk said he hesitated. It was like something inside him told him this wasn't normal. But then Dean stepped up, with that fake easy smile, and said something, some smooth line that made the clerk drop his guard. He let it go. He didn't press her, didn't stop them from leaving. I wonder if he ever thought about it after. Like maybe he should have done more, but no one really saw it for what it was then. Not until weeks later, when Lena's face was plastered on a missing persons poster. That's when it hit the clerk, the full weight of what he'd witnessed but didn't act on. I think about Lena standing there in that store, desperate but silent, and it breaks something in me. How many times did she try to reach out, only to be shut down or ignored? That stop at Benson's was more than just a quick errand. It was a silent scream, lost in a small town where nobody saw the danger coming. And it makes me ask, how many other moments like that slipped by unnoticed? How many chances to save her did we miss because we didn't see the signs until it was too late? I've gone back and tried to pinpoint the moment it all started, but I can't. There's no clear line in the sand, no event, no message, not even a weird phone call, just this vague sense that something wasn't right. Spring had barely settled in that year. The snow melt was dragging, the trees still looked half dead, and there was this chill in the air that didn't make sense. I remember thinking the whole season felt wrong. Maybe that's hindsight talking, I don't know. Blake Redmond, he was my older brother, was the kind of guy people forgot was in the room until he was gone. Ex-army, solid, quiet, always preferred isolation. I don't say that in a poetic way either. He straight up built a one-room cabin out on Hunter's Bluff. No electricity, no plumbing, just trees, silence, and whatever thoughts he didn't want to share with the rest of us. He wasn't running from anything, at least not that I ever saw. It's just how he was wired. The thing is, even guys like Blake leave footprints. He'd swing by town maybe once a month for supplies, batteries, jerky, maybe a fifth of something strong, then back up the bluff like a ghost. But one day, no swing by, no trip into town, no signs at all. I didn't realize it at first. No one did. It was like the wind changed direction, and no one noticed until everything felt still. People assumed he was just being Blake. I wish I'd paid attention sooner. I wish I could say there was a moment, some date, a call, something that told me this is the day he vanished. But there wasn't. One day he was there, and then he wasn't. That year, Thanksgiving didn't hit right. I remember the food tasted fine, people were talking, the usual stuff, but something sat wrong in my chest the whole time. Blake wasn't there. And yeah, he wasn't the kind to crowd around a dinner table with the rest of us every holiday, but he always showed up for Thanksgiving. Quiet in the corner, maybe. But there, this time nothing. I tried not to make a big deal out of it. We all did. Gave him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he lost track of time up on the bluff. Maybe the truck broke down. Maybe he was just being Blake. But the excuses started sounding thin fast. Mom couldn't shake it. A few days later, she drove out there on her own. I didn't go, I had work, or at least that's what I told myself. I regret that now. When she got back, I didn't even need to ask what she found. Her voice was off. She kept repeating the same thing. It didn't feel right. Said the cabin looked like he'd just stepped out to grab firewood or something. Bed still made, lanterns still sitting on the table, food wrappers in the bin. Just no Blake. And the weirdest part, both his truck and the old trail bike were gone. He never took both at the same time. That bluff road was rough, sometimes impassable if it rained even a little. So unless he drove the truck with the bike loaded on the back, something about it didn't make sense. She stood in that cabin and said it felt hollow, not like someone left, more like someone got erased. And that word stuck with me ever since. Erased, not gone, not missing, just taken out of the picture. I can't remember his name now. Weird how that happens, someone who briefly becomes the center of your world for a moment, and then later you can't even place their name, just this shape in your memory. He lived maybe a quarter mile from Blake, down the old service trail that ran parallel to the bluff. Didn't see much of him before all this. Didn't think I'd ever need to. He was the one who told us Blake had gone to Alaska. Said it real casual too, like it was common knowledge. Claimed Blake had loaded up the truck in the middle of the night and just left. Said he'd mentioned something about heading north, wanting a fresh start, and for a while we clung to that, because honestly, Blake had talked about Alaska once or twice, the way people dream out loud. Someday I'll go off the grid, really off the grid. And it felt easier to believe that version of events. It gave the whole thing an ending, a clean break, but it never settled right with me. Not the way the guy said it, not how certain he seemed, or how vague he was when we asked for details. Couldn't say what day Blake left, couldn't remember if he saw him pack, just kept repeating that he was sure it was Alaska. And then the silence started to stretch. No calls, no postcards, nothing. Not a single trace. No one ever heard from Blake again. Not a friend, not our mom, not me. Nothing from any border crossings. No bank activity. No hint that he was ever in Alaska at all. Eventually I stopped wondering about Alaska. I started wondering about that neighbor. It didn't come up right away. Those first few weeks after Blake disappeared, it was mostly dead silence. Then came the Alaska theory. Then the questions, then eventually the whispers. They started off quiet, almost like folks were testing how much they could say without sounding crazy. But the longer Blake stayed gone, the louder it got, and it always came back to this woman. Supposedly she was married, lived in Fairbend, name was never consistent. Some said Laura, others said Angie, but the story stayed more or less the same. People claimed Blake had been seeing her on and off, that he'd get supplies in town and head straight to her place before going back to the cabin. I never saw them together, but I wasn't exactly keeping tabs on his love life. Still, the idea of Blake caught up in something messy like that didn't sit right. He'd been through enough in the military, came back quieter, kept to himself. This wasn't him, at least, not the version of him I thought I knew. Then came the second half of the rumor. The part that always made my skin crawl. Her husband had found out that there'd been a fight. Some people claimed they heard yelling in the woods that night, maybe even a gunshot. One woman swore she heard someone calling for help. But when someone vanishes like that, folks start remembering all sorts of things, don't they? No one ever filed a report. No arrests, no body, just stories stacked on top of stories. And yet, I still think about it. Because in the absence of real answers, all you're left with are the whispers. And the worst part, sometimes the whispers feel closer to the truth than anything official ever did. It was easy to cling to at first. The idea that Blake had just gone off the grid, finally chased that fantasy he used to mumble about sometimes. No roads, no neighbors, no noise, just wilderness and space. We told ourselves maybe that's what he needed, maybe that's what he did, and for a while it helped. It filled the silence. But then time passed, and the silence just stretched. No postcards, no calls, no one saw him, not even a single blurry Facebook post from some bar in Anchorage. So we started looking, checking what little we could, credit card statements, DMV records, anything that might leave a trail, and there was nothing. Like he'd vanished before even leaving Spokane County. That's when the neighbor started acting strange. I still don't remember his name. Some quiet older guy, always wore flannel and had a limp. He'd been the one to tell us Blake packed up and left for Alaska, said it real casual like it was nothing. But the more we pushed, just asking things like when exactly he saw him last, or whether Blake said goodbye, the more uncomfortable he got. Not defensive, just off, like we were bothering him with something he'd hoped everyone would drop. There's something about a person who avoids eye contact when you're not even accusing them of anything. Something in the way he shifted in his doorway when we showed up one afternoon. Said he was busy, said he already told us everything. And maybe he had. Or maybe that was all a cover. I don't know, but sometimes I replay that conversation in my head, thinking about what he didn't say, about how maybe the first lie we ever heard was the one we were so willing to believe. It felt like a last grasp at something real, even though I wasn't sure what I was hoping for. Ray, my wife, insisted we go. The event was hosted by Hillside County's medical examiner's office. They'd set it up to help families like us. People could bring photos, dental records, DNA samples, anything that might help identify missing folks if their remains ever turned up. We showed up with what little we had, a handful of old photos of Blake, some worn dental records from years ago. I handed over my DNA, trying to hold it together, but inside it was like I was signing off on a truth I wasn't ready to face. That maybe Blake was never coming back, that he was somewhere out there, if anywhere at all, but not with us anymore. The whole time I felt this weight settle deeper in my chest. It wasn't just the fear that we might never find him. It was the helplessness of it all, like we were standing in this room full of other people, holding on to memories and scraps of hope, all waiting for something that might never come. And still, part of me keeps replaying everything that led to this. The empty cabin, the strange neighbor, the whispers about the woman, the cold Alaska story. None of it fits together cleanly. None of it explains why Blake vanished without a trace. I don't think I've fully accepted it yet. Maybe I never will. But that day, standing there handing over those things, it felt like the closest I'd come to admitting it out loud. Like the last thread tying me to hope was fraying. And maybe that's what makes this whole thing so hard to shake, knowing the questions still outnumber the answers. Ray was the one who answered it. I remember how her voice shifted when she put the phone to her ear. Something about the way she tensed up made me stop what I was doing. The man on the other end said he knew Blake, claimed they'd met through some veterans group in Idaho. That part sounded plausible. Blake did have a way of drifting into those small, tight circles. But then the guy started talking about Blake spiraling, paranoia creeping in, thinking someone was watching him near the cabin. He didn't say much beyond that. The call was short, almost like he was nervous or didn't want to get caught. Then just as suddenly, the line went dead. Ray tried calling back right away, but it was like he vanished. No answer, no voicemail, nothing. Later we found out the number was a burner phone, bought with cash, no traces. It felt like someone wanted to stay hidden, wanted us to know something, but not too much. That call, brief as it was, opened up more questions than it answered. Why was Blake scared? Who was watching him? Was this man even telling the truth, or was it some cruel joke? Sometimes I wonder if Blake had gotten himself tangled with something dangerous, or if his mind was just breaking down out there in the woods. Either way, that call didn't bring relief. It brought more unease, and after all these years I still turn it over in my head, wondering what was real and what was just noise, wondering if that man was trying to warn us or just stirring the pot. The worst part is knowing there's no way to know for sure, just like Blake's disappearance, unfinished, unanswered, and still haunting me.